it all for school, but you go in there, if you have test anxiety, your brain will lock up, your memory lock up, and you can't really solve things. So what I'm learning to refine and attack anxiety and really succeed. I'll change that, I'm pretty sure, to erase fear, or something close to that. I think I'm gonna use the fear word rather than anxiety, even though I want to leave the anxiety stuff in there. So I've been spending a little time on this, thinking it through about fear and anxiety. And so fear is sort of kind of the big bubble, and anxiety is inside of it. It looks like anxiety to me is more of a mood that's an ongoing orientation about your fear of the future, whereas fear is more generic, or sometimes very targeted to a specific thing. And so they're both intimately related, and we're talking about the same stuff. But the challenge is you can't enjoy your problems if you're not good at solving them. And if you can solve your problems, your anxiety goes away. But the problem is, a lot of times you can't be creative and solve your problems because you have anxiety. And the best example is like test anxiety. You can know it all for school, but you go in there, if you have test anxiety, your brain will lock up, your memory lock up, and you can't really solve things. So what I'm learning to refine and attack here is to bring people around to enjoying your problems. I met with some young men this morning on this topic, on anxiety. And one of them was telling me, looking at that title, the new one, and said, just already, I want to read it. Already I feel different because I want to think about, yes, how could I start enjoying the problems that come to me in my life? And you can do it when you learn how to erase your anxiety and how a better method of solving problems. Once you get there, you're golden, and life is infinitely better, just infinitely better.
Well, absolutely. I read your book, and I found it very interesting. What I also found interesting was how, over the years, I've been in business since I was 17. I didn't have coaching when I was younger. I figured some of this stuff out. I figured out my anxieties. I mentioned before to you that I was extremely shy. In fact, when I used to go to visit a customer, the higher the customer in terms of status, a big company, I'll give you an example. I had an appointment with this big company. Noma was the name of the company. They're out of business now, way back when. And I drove there the day before to make sure I knew where it was, because it was on the other side of the city, an area I was unfamiliar with.
Perfect.
So then okay, I'm at the right place. Great. Because we're talking, folks, here about before GPS, when you actually used a written map in a book. And so I did that. I wrote all my directions on how to get there. It was relatively simple, but anyways. So then the next morning, I had a 9 o'clock appointment. I arrived there at 7 a.m.
Ooh.
I had 2 shirts with me, the one I was wearing and the one I was going to put on before I went in. My shirt would be soaked with perspiration, no matter what I used, like, Mitchum, blah, blah, blah. I could defy
Plaster
every
of
chemical.
Paris, concrete, didn't matter.
Yeah, I was terrified. It would take me an hour, all right, to just start to calm down. And then I was 18 at the time. So I was meeting someone who was at the time, he was about 40, probably 42, 43 years old. So he's been a purchaser for this company for a number of years. He's been in business probably since his 20s. So he had a lot behind him. And I'm just a kid, right? And I'm going to talk to an adult. And anyways, the time drew closer, and I started to calm down a bit, and I started thinking, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Is he going to shoot me? No. Am I going to die? No. Are they going to throw me out? No. They wanted me to come. In fact, when I called them the day before, they wanted me to come that day. And so as I started realizing the realities and overcame my fear, I changed my shirt and went inside. I went inside early. It was maybe 8:15. He hadn't even arrived yet. And I figured, hey, it's better early than late for a 9 a.m. Anyways, it went really well. It went really well. The next time I saw him, which was the next day, and I saw him pretty well every day for the next 4 or 5 business days, because we were working on pricing and I was asking questions. And in those days, if you wanted to get a drawing, you had to wait 48 hours for a pure later or mail, or you just drove down and get it. And they were urgent for this product. They needed another supplier. So anyways, so I went there every day. The next day I was fine. And by the end of that cycle of, let's say, 2 weeks that it took for me to get a purchase order for the first 5,000 pieces, that was a test run, I was really getting confident. And then once the test run, all that stuff, it took the whole thing took about a month. So I walked in there with the final, because the test run required a few adjustments that they found. Because when you make 1 or 2 pieces, everything works. When you make 5,000, they find where some of the problems will lay. So we made some adjustments in the product. And so I went there with the final adjustments and everybody loved it. And actually something else had happened in the meantime, and that was they needed an additional 5,000 before we adjusted the tooling. I already had them made because I had hired a guy to make them and we had no other work for him. So we made another 5,000. So we were able to ship him.
So what'd you learn about anxiety and confidence back then?
I want to tell you what led to what the ultimate thing that happened. By the end of that month, because we serviced them so well and made the parts so quickly, okay, their second order of 5,000, I shipped to them in 4 days, which they never would have believed. When I walked in there after that second shipment and showed them the other samples of the adjustments that they needed, they gave me $200,000 in purchase orders. And this is 1983. And today, value, that's got to be worth 700,000. This is Canadian dollars, but the dollar wasn't so far apart in those days. It's got to be worth maybe $1 million Canadian, 700,000 US today. Was a big order. And and that was for shipments throughout the rest of the year. After that, I was never shy again to meet anybody because I was able to bring to my company, which I started with my father. Our sales to that date was $40,000. So I added 200,000 in sales, and then it rolled.
So what's fascinating about that, and a lot of people don't get there. So what you're doing is you're growing confidence because you had some positive experience, but it's trickier than that. One, you didn't know the future, it had to go, and this is why people are anxious. They're sure the future is going to go bad, and even if you don't know how it's going to go, you can't be anxious. The other piece you did, which is quite striking and smart, is actually to process what's the worst case scenario. And the way I was taught and the way I teach it is figure out the worst case scenario, but likely, you did, they're not going to shoot me, they're not going to do this, but figure out what the worst thing would be. And then ask this question: would I survive? Could I live with it? Because once you know the worst outcome and you live with it, that you won't die, then you're in an entirely different place. Here's what people do. There are people that go through that exact same experience and not learn one thing from it. And here's how they do it. It's the same with phobias. You're afraid of an elevator. You get on the elevator. You go up to the 13th floor, let's say, and you get off. And Dave Vella would have said, Hey, I didn't die. I guess elevators don't kill you. And people that don't improve and don't grow through this go, wow, I didn't die that time.
Oh, wow.
Somebody could have gone through your experience and gone, what? I was lucky that time, but next time it could be worse. They didn't see through me or some mind game like that. And we're busy predicting the future. And if we get out of the prediction business, then what's left is, instead of trying to control outcomes, we'll learn to live by principles. We'll learn skills and principles, and we'll use them, and they'll take care of us magically in this world.
That's interesting. You see, one of the things I've always had, I shouldn't say always, but sometime in high school, I realized you can't change history, but you could change the future. And you change the future by planning the future. So that's one of the things I tried to do, was plan. And so I knew that if I go and see, in this case, the buyer at Noma, I already had an appointment. I was welcome there. I was invited to come there. I had a purpose for going there. All right. I had no anxiety then to go. You know, I just went, and I always arrived early, because when I did arrive early, he was so impressed that I was early. I was there before he arrived at work.
Right.
Okay. That I said, hey, this is a good thing, you know.
Well, yeah. And so in planning, I mean, I don't want to minimize that. So we do want to create a future, have a vision, a dream, a hope, etc. And then we put a plan together. But the trick is, if we lock into that plan that it's guaranteed, it has to go according to plan, we don't have any flexibility to adjust. So if one step turns out wrong, it'll collapse a lot of people, because they don't understand there's no plan that's ever been followed in history. You have a plan to organize your steps, but you still adjust it. You try to anticipate, I got to get there early, I got to have an extra shirt. You did think about something about ordering some extras, but you didn't know exactly how to go. And in fact, it surprised you. You didn't really plan for the $700,000 gig, the extra, the 200,000. You didn't plan for that. You were really following good principles, which is, I'm going to be respectful of time. I'm going to be as clear as I know how to be. I'm going to try to meet their need. We didn't even get under the sales process, but you were still operating principles, and you weren't just affecting the future the way you wanted, but beyond what you hoped,
Yes.
And that was because you did some things right, not because you pictured that result. It's because if you take actions that will make things happen, things will happen. If you don't take actions, you take bad actions, bad things will happen.
That's a good point. If you take action, say that again. If you take action.
Yeah, if you take action that'll produce good things will happen. If you take actions that'll lead to bad things will happen.
Well,
it's magical that
exactly.
way. In fact, I do say it this way. I get in trouble with people because we're all into goals, but I like to say that the plan is mightier than the goal. So you have this goal or vision, but if your plan is bad, it doesn't matter what your vision is. Your plan will never get you there, right? I went through this with my daughter. So my daughter graduated from college a semester early. She's hanging around the house. She hadn't figured out what she wanted to do quite. She wasn't really doing anything. And I finally showed her a little matrix I developed called the AHA matrix. And so basically all it did is it made her look at what she wanted compared to what she was getting, and look at how she was getting it compared to what she wanted. So here's the example. I said, what do you want to do? She said, oh, I want to work for a pro sports team. I said, great. Any sport? She said, yeah, it doesn't matter, but professional. Okay. And I said, so are you getting any offers? She said, no. Okay. I said, so that's clear. So you want to work for a sports team and you're getting 0 offers. Is that right? She said, yes. I said, so what's your plan? What plan are you following right now to get 0 offers? Right. And so, like, if I followed your plan, I bet that would work for me. So what are you doing? She said, well, I'm brushing up my resume. I said, good, brushing up your resume. I said, are you sending it out to anyone? Nope. Okay, don't send it out. And what else you doing? She said, praying. I said, good, you praying? And I said, I've noticed you've been floating the river. It's a thing to do in Central Texas here, right? With your friends. She said, yeah. I said, so let me ask you, do you think if I floated the river with my friends, prayed, did not send my resume out, but brushed up, I too could not get a job with a professional team? She went, yes, Dad. And then I said, what are your odds if you keep following this plan of getting the result working for a pro team? She said, 0. I said, so either you need to be happy with the result because you got a great plan for it, or you need to, and she said, change the plan. So we changed the plan, and in 2 months, she was hired by the St. Louis Cardinals. Worked
Oh,
there for 5
wow.
years. Yeah.
That's a hit.
Yeah, as you might say. Yeah.
A home run.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing with people that they have plans that if they follow them won't work. And they haven't
Yes.
sat and thought that through itself. So you've got to understand that the nature of that game, is part of the conversation. And it gets its macro micro. It goes down to your presentation to that person. Like even your plan about how do you approach sales. I sat down and worked out. I finally got tired of it, and I sat down and worked out. Not tired of it, but I just realized I'd been lazy. So you and I have a mutual friend, JT, and I broke down. I've listened to him do a sales pitch enough, and so what I finally did is I broke down. I haven't shared it with him, but I mean, probably won't. But I broke down exactly what he's doing because he does these spontaneous sales pitches, and they're all the same form. And so all he's doing, he does this. He's saying, find out their problem, right? So what their need is, the client, whatever you're selling,
Yes.
the buyer, and then show them how it's going to get worse if they don't change, and then tell them what you do, what you offer, and why it works, and why this is so crazy affordable, and then call to action. So that's what he's doing in my observation every time. I hadn't seen the notes on it, but that's what he's doing. He's just taking, here's their need. So if you took somebody's need and then you showed them, if you keep this same course, like I did with my daughter, it's going to just get worse, right? But here's what we do to solve that issue, to solve your problem. And here's why it solves it. And here's why it's so crazy affordable if you get it right now. And so why don't you sign the paper? Even having that kind of plan as a salesperson would be pretty magic for most salespeople because they go in there trying to say what their good stuff is before they even figure out what the problem is.
See, when I sell, like I was just with one of my customers this week, a major pizzeria, and I don't sell. I am a purveyor of information because these companies, number one, they don't want to be sold to. They want to buy, but they don't want to be sold to. You can't tell them what they want. You could only show them all the options that you could offer, try to understand their problem, and recommend what will solve their problem best and why your product you believe will solve their problem or satisfy their need better than anyone else's.
Yeah, I think it's right.
Very, very simply. And then they come to me and they say, well, the thing is, in this case, it's a pizza screen. And they said, there's a lot of guys we could buy pizza screens from. Why should we buy them from you? I said, that's an excellent question. I said, number one, I said, our screens are made to your standards. You want no rivets, you want no staples, basically seamless. The minimum material requirement that we use, like for our basic, is much higher than anybody else's. I said, you could take anybody's screen, weigh them, ours weighs more. And I tell them, take 10 of them, because the weight may not seem like a big difference. Take 10 of them, and it amplifies it because your scale isn't so accurate. So you'll see our 10 weighs 20% more than their 10, which makes a big difference on an item that's very light to begin with. I said the third thing is we put on a non-stick coat release coating on them for you. And no one else does that. No one else has the formula to do that. And this is FDA certified. And this keeps you in business. Because if you go and buy someone else's screen, and please do send them to a restaurant first and see what happens. I guarantee you, your restaurants are going to be sending them back, and they're going to want the Crown cookware screen, the pizza screen.
Yeah.
And anyways, I'm just
Well,
telling them the truth.
you're still doing the same kind of thing. And by the way, I think there are a variety of ways you can sell, and some of it's unique to the personality of the person, you know. So we've got a nuance in there. Not everybody hits a home run the same way, but those guys can hit home runs, you know.
Well,
So,
that's a good point.
But what you were saying still was first understanding their problem, because see, you did that. You said you understood what they wanted, right? And then you showed them why the other options would not give them what they wanted, between the nonstick and the rivets and all the rest of it. And so it's why your game is superior, but it works from an understanding what they want, not I'm just trying to shove on you what I got or assume anything.
Well, that is key.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk to a customer, if they bring me in, if they call me, I find out what their problem is. If they have any solutions, like this, a lot of times their problem may be like in a bakery, that they're making their cake, they're trying to achieve a certain cost. This is a big thing in the industry, especially when you're dealing with box stores. So if they make a cake for one of the box stores, that cake has to sell for $9.99. Well, dairy prices go up 10%. So what do? Well, now we'll come and we'll say, okay, well, you need a smaller cake pan. Oh, but we still got to call it a 10-inch cake. I said, well, there's a few sizes, a few secrets to the trade. I said, number one, we can make you a cake pan that is just a little bit smaller, 9.5 inches. All right. Can you put a bigger bead of icing on the outside?
Right.
There's your 10-inch cake.
Right.
You know what? It all depends. It's just on the bottom. They still, whatever. And then the other thing I said is try to change, instead of selling a 10-inch cake, if you could sell it by weight, would always be better. But cake is sold by size. Everybody thinks a 6-inch cake, you know, it's like pizzas. You go into a pizza place, they sell it by slice. Oh, that's a large 10-slice pizza. What? So if you cut it into 20 slices, it's bigger? No.
But you can make more. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Shirts, shirts are sold, bigger shirts, the same size. I mean, same price, but different sizes. T-shirt, it is a curiosity. What's the old saying of the folks that invented super glue? You want to make it by the gallon, but sell it by the drop.
Oh, I didn't hear that. That's interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that we do too. So, I go into a bakery and they need, I'll tell them, no problem. I said, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but it's not how much you spend, it's how much you make. And that's a saying I borrowed from JT, our mutual friend.
Or how much you keep.
And business coach. And anyways, and I'll say, okay, it's going to cost you about $2,000 in tooling. You got to buy $20,000 in pans. You're going to save how much per cake? Divide the 20,000 by your savings per cake. All right, great. How many cakes do you make in a day? How many do you make in a week? Multiply it, like you run it all week? Yes. All right. And you run, oh yeah, this supplier, this customer, we run all month, every day of the week, like for 4 hours. We're always making cake. And so I calculate, all right, in 3 weeks, you've made the cost of your pans back. I said, after that, you could start paying me a royalty.
Yeah. Well, let's pretend my math's wrong. So 6 weeks.
Yeah.
What can you pay for that you make the money back in 6 weeks? And then it's all profit. Yeah.
The
Come on.
ROI on custom made cake pans is incredibly fast. So I have other guys that say, yeah, but I could buy it from China and I could get the size I need from China and it'll be like a third of the price. I go, absolutely. I said, it's a third of the weight. It's not as good a pan, so it won't last as long, number one. I said, but more importantly, let's talk about how much it's going to cost you to buy your pans from China. They said, I already told you. You want $15 a pan. I can get it from China for $5. I said, yes, but I can have pans for you in 3 weeks. How long does it take for you to get your pans from China? I already know the answer to that.
6 months.
3 to 4 months. That's if nothing goes wrong. Okay. I said, there's a pending shipping strike. It could take, it could take an additional 6 weeks. So in the meantime, you keep making your oversized cake and losing money or not making money. So if you bought my pants from me at $15 in 3 to 4 weeks time, that means you're going to be up and running in, worst case scenario, 1 month. That means you're in
you got a 3 or 4 month advantage of just income already. Yeah,
exactly. You're already making your money back. The Chinese pan actually cost you more money, and no one thinks about it like that. They just see the book value. I said, if you'd like, I could charge you each month for the pan, for the 3 months and stretch out, like you could pay the bill over 3 months. Whatever, as your income comes. Normally, I don't offer that unless it's a customer that's like really solid and I dealt with before. And then usually when you do the math for them, because most people are not good at math or never think that way. It's not so much the math as it is the understanding. No one thinks of that. They think price, because that's what mom and dad taught them. Don't pay $2 for a can of soup over at this store when you could go to this store and get the same can of soup, same brand, for $1. Well,
I gotta drive for 10 more minutes. I burned up gas.
Well, sometimes you don't. Like where I live, I got 3 or 4 different stores. I go to one store for vegetables and meat and another store for canned products. Because the premium store has the premium vegetables and meat or anything that, fresh sort of produce area. And then when it comes to cans, I could buy it from a bargain store as long as the expiry date, and I'll even buy.
Right.
I don't worry about expiry dates on soup. Like that's baloney as far as I'm concerned. Soup is when they built the nuclear blast, what are they called? Shelters,
yeah.
They fill them up with canned food. And they said that canned food is good for 10 to 25 years, but they change it every 5 years. All right. Just for the sake,
good measure. Yeah.
For good measure, just in case they actually have to use the site. They want another 15 years of food in there. And
crazy. Yeah. So if you're comparing apples to apples, prices make sense. But the problem is they don't count the cost to understand the whole game, just like you've been laying out with cakes and pans and all the rest of this stuff. If it's all the same, a coaching thing is all the same, just hire any coach. Really? Is it really all the same?
There's exactly. When you hire a coach, it's not only the coach, you got to hire a coach, not someone who just graduated from school, because everybody thinks they know everything once they get their degree or MBA or whatever they went, and they probably know a lot, but experience just means so much, because it's one thing to teach someone how to make a cup of coffee. Well, you got to put the grounds in here, you got to put the water, but getting that recipe right for your palate or your customer's palate, that takes skill. Why does Starbucks do so well selling coffee when there's a million other people that you can get a coffee from? They
branding, they figure out the flavor, they put cocaine in it. I don't know, they do something.
They don't put cocaine. All right. Here,
yeah,
hey,
so full circle, one thing I don't want to miss, and I don't know where I picked this up, at least the phrasing. It seems like it's a guy named Joyner, but in marketing or in sales, if I had a shortcut for anybody, I'd just say, look, what you're trying to do is think about how to understand and explain what you offer in a way that at the end they're saying to themselves, I would be an idiot not to buy this. I would be stupid not to buy it. That this is such an obvious thing to do. I would be dumb to walk away from this moment and not buy it. Because if you actually can get to that point, you're not manipulating them. You've gotten some real reasoning, because they really can look at, here's the path. I buy this, life goes good. I don't buy it, life goes less good. That's the game.
That's exactly it. It's a great way to put it, But I was thinking about your book, and when I was reading your book, I was applying it to my experience in business. Boy, I wish I had your book when I was 20 years old or 17.
Me too.
Yeah. but anyways, one of the things that you talk about, and it's so critical, is you understand your problem. Mm-hmm. Not what you think your problem is or what it appears to be, but really dissect the issue. And in my experience, we have a major box store that sells our pots, and we used to have a 20% return rate, and
20.
It was awful. Like, it was costing us a lot of money. Not every store. We noticed the bigger stores had the return rates. The smaller stores didn't. And I had to beg for the information from the buyers, because they don't want to give this to you, right? But I said, listen, I want to improve it. I want to turn this return rate to 0. How do we do this? So anyways, I went to a number of stores, and whenever I traveled, I dropped into one of their stores, looked for our product, and I noticed something, that our knobs were missing. So we put the lid on the pot, we put the knob inside the pot, we put the whole pot in a bag, seal the bag, put it in a box so that 2 pots were in one box. And that's how we shipped it. But when the stores displayed it, they took it out of the box, which they have to, then out of the bag. They didn't like the bag. And I would ask some of the smaller stores, you could talk to the person that sets up the area. So I said, why do you take it out of the bag? Oh, we're not supposed to have things sitting in a bag on our shelf. I said, why is that? They don't like the look. Okay, so you take it out of the bag. Now the lid is loose, and the knob can easily just be picked out. Well, that's what was happening. That lid would drop, get damaged. Now the whole pot was no good.
They think it's a piece of junk.
Yeah. So what we started to do was shrink wrapping the lid with the knob attached to it. And by doing that, that already brought it down considerably. Like within a month, we already noticed, like, it was going great because it wasn't actually people returning the product. It was the store making a claim that the pot was no good, defective, damaged, whatever. And the store would just make the claim. Then we still had some claims. And then going through stores, I saw that sometimes the lids were missing. So what we did was, when you buy a fridge, you get that blue tape all over the fridge that comes right off. Most appliances have them to protect the corners, and they wrap it around to hold, packaging on. And then when you have it on your floor, you take all this stuff off. I bought that stuff, and we started wrapping our lid with that to the pot. And then I saw the pot sitting on the shelf with the lid wrapped to it. It went down, not to zero, nothing, but so close to zero that you might as well call it zero. Like in $400,000 of sales, we'd have a few $100s of returns. But the thing was, the problem was not returns. The problem was not people buying the pot, using it, and returning it after the weekend because they figured, well, I don't need another one till next year. I'll get my money back, which was a problem or could be a problem, but wasn't the problem. And it wasn't, anything else. It wasn't people using the pot, being dissatisfied in returning it. It was the packaging. And we never thought of that.
Well, the packaging and the stores.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
but it was my responsibility. Even
you did something brilliant in that story that I don't even think you noticed because it's so natural to you. And it's straight out of my book. So here's the trick. What we tend to do is if we define the problem too soon, then we'll try to fix that thing. Like it could have been, somebody could have said, well, it's the kind of clients we have, or the salespeople, or it could be any of these things.
Oh, you blame the store.
Yeah, you blame the thing, and so you try to fix that thing. Like you could have classes for the stores to behave better or whatever. But what you did in that whole story, and you can go back and listen to yourself in the tape, because what you did is you said, I had a goal of 0 returns. And the trick to problem solving is the solution to any problem is a goal. And if you set the goal right, and the other piece of that was I like to get people to try to say, how do we solve this forever? How do we make returns go away forever? I would have used that language with you if you and I were brainstorming. And you'd have, I want to get to 0 or close to it. And having that goal changes the game. One of my clients is a plumbing company, and one of their problems is callbacks, right? They didn't turn the water on. They didn't do this. They didn't double check some seal.
Easy little things to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I generated help them generate a check.
Immediately, I would say they need a checklist.
Yeah, immediately. And that's what we did. We have a checklist going and coming, etc. And in that process, we discovered the way most plumbers were doing it is they would fix the thing, let's say the toilet, and then they would show the customer, and then they would clean up, and then they'd give them the bill, et cetera, et cetera. And I pointed out in that sequence, I said, why aren't you basically cleaning it up first? So you show a customer a cleaned area with the thing working.
Brilliant.
And they went, that's a great idea.
So I call it that Apollo 13. If you remember the movie, well, you remember the movie. The problem was they had limited energy, so that was their problem. But that wasn't the problem. The actual problem was to find the right sequence of what switches you had to turn on when, so that you maximized the use of the power that was.
And they did the same thing with the air filtering for the limb. So they had all this junk, but they had a goal, and the goal was we got to get this to fit this. And
Yes,
this is what we
with
can
this.
use. But they're focused on a goal. And the goal itself, when you reach it, by its nature, solves the problem. That's
By
the trick.
by the way, a brilliant movie to watch, to learn, to solve problems, to experience. Because what was the worst case scenario? Death. Your business does not have that for the most part, unless you're dealing in
Yeah.
explosives or something,
Yeah.
extremely dangerous.
Not on my watch.
Not on my watch. And it was that positive attitude for that goal. And maybe that vest had something to do with it.
You never know.
I like that vest. It was brilliant. It was beautiful. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, I didn't read this in your book, I don't think, but it's something that I do. I still suffer from anxiety. And I think everybody does to some degree. So when I got into work yesterday. What day's today? All right. Yeah, it was yesterday. So I got into work yesterday and I had left my slate open for the day because there were a few tidying up jobs I wanted to get done. Well, I got in, there were 3 emails of urgent matter and I had to deal with them. And my daughter brought them to my attention right away because anyways, so I had to deal with them. I started feeling anxious that my day was disorganized. So first I stopped. I wrote down what I had to do again on a piece of paper. On the computer is kind of nice, and I like putting it on my calendar, but sometimes I need to write it on a piece of paper. Maybe it's the way my mind works. Number 2, I put numbers on priority. Okay, I wanted to get this done today, but if I don't get it done today, what's the worst case scenario again? Right. Oh, I could get that done tomorrow. I just wanted to do it today. So it's not that I had to, I just wanted to. All right. So I'm going to push that to tomorrow. And, I adjust things around. And then when it comes to 3 urgent emails, I emailed all of them back. I'm going to, let me get back to you shortly. I want to see what I can do for you on this. So that bought me time, because the first thing anybody wants when anything is urgent is to know someone's looked at it, right? They want a reply. So I gave him that reply and I knew right away, and I'd say I'd have it done. I have you something by noon today. All right. Which gave me 4 hours, like it was 8 in the morning. Anyways, so then I address, in my case, I always take care of the customer that turns on the lights first. All right. So I dealt with that customer. And by separating the work into like different courses, like if you ate at a restaurant, they don't give you the salad, the meal, the soup, the dessert, the bread all at the same time.
Once. Yeah.
They break it up. So I do the same thing with my all the things that all of a sudden are dropped on my plate. And the other thing I've learned to do is try to look at a problem first and see, can I delegate this to someone else to take care of? Oh, it's a shipping problem. That's what's really happening here. All right. Give it to my guy who handles the shipping. Get him to take care of it. Then I email the customer. But the real thing is, you got to take your whole activity, no matter what is thrown at you. You can't do it all at once. There's no such thing as multitasking. I'm not on 2 computers at the same time. So you determine what's most important, and you break it down into pieces. And then you get that first one and you put a check mark on it. Then the second one, you put a check mark on it. I was done within an hour, even though I gave myself 4 hours. And then I returned to the stuff that I wanted to do. And I got almost everything done that day that I had planned. But this has taken time for me to learn. And I think a lot of people get trapped in that anxiety, as you say in your book, that you don't think of how to solve the problem of anxiety.